celebrations this morning with some welcome remarks from Honorable Dr. Gail T.C. Rigobert, who is the Minister for Education, Innovation, Gender Relations and Sustainable Development, and the Minister for UNESCO Affairs.
I want to begin by thanking the former Director of Gender Relations, Ms. Shams Gasper, for her energy, her confidence, her faith, and for seeing this project through to successful completion. I thank you very, very heartily for that. I was reflecting on my way here, and I wondered, how does a little girl decide to enter politics? Because perhaps for many of us being celebrated here today, that dream was long implanted in our souls. I know that is my story. And I look at Melissa, I recall our years in Trinidad, for example, while I served as president of the St. Lucia Student Association of Trinidad and Tobago, LUSAT, and you were one of my vice presidents while at CUC it was. And I wondered if for you too, as a young female leader, you had begun to contemplate your role. I remember Alison Gajada in her days at the St. Joseph's Convent School, and her private reflections and public confessions about her own ambitions, about participating in our politics. And I can go around the room, and from woman to woman, I see persons who are imbued with a particular kind of courage, a particular kind of strength, because we cannot deny that we are indeed playing in a male-dominated field, and that is politics. But I beg to ask the question, is this really a male-dominated field? Or is it that women hesitate to present themselves for elective politics for all the unsavory reasons that are now floating through our heads? Can we, the current crop of female politicians, do more to change that? Do more to encourage little girls who, like ourselves, are harboring, or like we once did, are harboring the dream of becoming a politician, are harboring the dream of making a significant contribution to the social and economic development of this country? I recall in 2011, when 3 women were called upon to contest the elections in Mico North, I remember that conversation we had with Austina, Janine, and I, and we reckoned, is this not a turning point in the history of St. Lucia, that 3 women can contest an election without necessarily going at one another's throats? And I see Miss Hippolyte nodding, and I recall the conversations I had with her in the corridors. You see, we've got to recognize that politics, as is often described as the theater of politics, there's a time and a place for everything. But we must never forget that the gaze, the national gaze, is on us, always. More so than the men, for some curious reasons which I don't quite understand. But our stride is under scrutiny. What we wear is under scrutiny. How we speak is under scrutiny. What we do is under scrutiny. What we fail to do is also under scrutiny, and I dare say more so than for our male counterparts. I want to applaud all of you, all of the sisters here gathered. I recall 2 years ago when I reflected on the celebration of International Women's Day, and I lamented the fact that there is no sisterhood. We should never allow partisan politics to interfere with our sisterhood. I recall as a child looking at a young Sarah Flood. You concerned about the brotherhood, Honorable Leader of the Opposition? The brotherhood is intact. I recall following the Honorable Sarah Flood very closely when she made her debut. And you have the fiery Tessa Mangal. And Leon Theodore is not here. But when I decided to enter politics, I went to her home. And I sat in her veranda with her. And she asked me a couple questions. She said, "Are you married?" I said, "No." "Are your parents alive?" "No." "Do you have a partner?" "No." She said, "Well, none of these things will make a difference, and if you did, because you are in this alone. That's when your head hits the pillow. You carry that weight alone." But you know what? I have discovered that though she is correct in part, we are here because we have one another. We are here because, notwithstanding our partisan affiliation, we can talk to one another. We can engage one another. And Yasmin, I want to thank you for the private conversations that we've had and for your encouragement. And of course, I must mention my former dean and now Governor General, Dame Paulette Louise. I'm always delighted that she has never threatened me with recollections of my teenage days at Sir Arthur Lewis. And I really want to thank you for that. But Barbara, if I may call you by your first name, Yasmin, thank you so very much for celebrating the women who have made extraordinary sacrifices to build this nation. But please allow me, though their faces do not appear in this publication or their names may not be mentioned, to applaud the many women on whose shoulders we stand. The single mothers, the housewives, the vendors, the women who lead us into rallies, who pray for us, who encourage us, the bare feet women who perhaps aren't running in heels. We are able to run in heels because of them. I thank you.
Distinguished guests, I have the distinct honor on behalf of the Inter-American Commission of Women of the Organization of the American States, known by its Spanish acronym SIM, to convey warm greetings to this august gathering under the esteemed patronage of Her Excellency Dame Paulette Louise for the launch of the publication Running in Heels, Women and Politics in St. Lucia, 1961 to 2016. The SIM is very pleased to be associated with this noteworthy project and to have collaborated with its sister agency, UNESCO, and with the Division of Gender Relations in the Ministry of Education, Innovation, Sustainable Development, and Gender Relations. The SIM avails itself of this opportunity to congratulate the distinguished women of St. Lucia who have made vital, varied, and valiant contributions to the political development of their country through elective politics and also through their political appointments. 10 of these special women who have been in elective politics deserve our highest commendation for their singular achievements in politics, a few of which are highlighted. We remember the late Mrs. Heraldine Rock. She was the first woman to hold an executive position as vice chair within a political party in 1964. She was also the first woman to be elected in Parliament in St. Lucia and its first female member of cabinet in 1964. Honorable Sarah Flood Beaubrun, the first woman to have won her seat for 3 times in general elections. Give it up for her, give it up. She did it in 1997, she did it in 2001, and she did it again in 2016. And she did so representing each of the main political parties. She also, woman power. is the only candidate to date in St. Lucia to have ever unseated a sitting prime minister in 1997. I recognize Ambassador Minister Rambali, the youngest ever candidate in any election in the Commonwealth, and who commandeered the highest ever female voting average of 68.68% in 1997. Honorable Dr. Gail Rigobert, TC Rigobert, pardon me, the first female leader of the opposition in St. Lucia in 2014, and the only female politician to date to begin her political career as an opposition member of parliament. Give it up for her, please. Yes, there she is, Miss Alvina Reynolds, the first politician to have made history in 2011 for the narrowest win of any candidate in a general election. 2 votes, people, 2 votes, okay? Wow, if those 2 people stayed home, it might have been a different story. My sister, Miss Emma Hippolyte, the only female politician to have ever amassed the largest number of votes to be cast in any constituency. Give it up for 5242 in 2011. She was also the first woman to act as Prime Minister in St. Lucia in 2015. My girl, Miss Layla Harroksing, the longest ever running female candidate in St. Lucia, who has faced the polls unbrokenly from 1997 to 2011 for 4 consecutive general elections in every possible political capacity. She has been an independent, she has been a minority, she has been a main party candidate, she was even the first female independent candidate. My girl. Moving on, although she's not here with us, Dr. Morella Joseph, the first woman in St. Lucia to become political leader of a party and to lead it into a general elections in 2001, and what a hard election it was for her. Please give it up for Dr. Joseph. And this one has special significance for me. Mrs. Janine Compton Antoine. Odlum Compton, go girl, the first woman to win a by-election in 2007 as she took over the seat from her deceased father, former Prime Minister Sir John Compton. And last but by no means least, the late Mrs. Frances Michel, Sister Frances as we remember her. She was the first woman in St. Lucia to co-found a party in 1982. The island's inaugural third party, it was called the PLP, and the first woman politician to be made a senator in St. Lucia, Sister Frances Michel. As a publication, Running in Heels, a first of its kind in St. Lucia, acknowledges the work that has been done in the exercise of women's political rights in St. Lucia. Globally, women are moving beyond female quotas, moving beyond reserved seats for women, these things that are considered essential political paraphernalia in complying with the 30% threshold for women's representation in political life. Therefore, movement is being advanced globally for a new gender paradigm for representative democracy, and one which contemplates women's full and effective participation in political life. Given the persistent exclusion of women from politics and the slow pace of change, in recent years, states have begun to rethink democracy from the perspective of parity between men and women in political life as a general democratic principle, and a strategy aimed at resolving the current deficits of representative democracies. Simply put, the gender metrics of parity call for a 60-40 representation as an uncompromising minimum in political and public life, and a crucial step, 60-40, in pushing forward for equitable representation until we reach complete parity, 50-50 parity. To date, within the hemisphere, the Americas, 5 Latin American countries, Bolivia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Mexico, and Nicaragua, have adopted parity and are among the countries in the world with the highest number of women parliamentarians. Over the last decade, the SIM has strengthened its role as a hemispheric policy forum in the promotion of the political rights of women in the Americas in 4 key areas: promotion of parity, women's leadership and incidence in public life, elimination of violence against women in political life, and strengthening the legislative agenda for women's rights. Much of this work involves formulating inter-American laws on key issues of concern, including violence against women in political life, which we developed in 2017. Next year, February 18th, 2018, the SIM will celebrate 90 years of the struggle for the recognition and protection of women's human rights, since it played a leading role in the struggle for the equality of women in the hemisphere. This 90th anniversary provides an opportunity to take stock of achievements and to identify remaining challenges to the full enjoyment of women's rights. Similarly, this is auspicious launch of Running in Heels, just prior to the SIM's 90th anniversary, is a great opportunity for St. Lucia to take stock of women's political incidents at the national level, with a view to developing useful strategies to address the gaps in parity at the level of political parties, at the level of Parliament, and within the decision-making tier of cabinets. Having said this, Running in Heels has revealed some interesting data on the situation of women in St. Lucia, and I crave your indulgence to share some of these with you, because I'm so honored to be able to present some of the findings here, even as we laud the contribution of women to the political development of St. Lucia. 56 years have passed since St. Lucia witnessed its first ever woman on the ballot, Mrs. Rosanna Laurie Donna Voss. She was an expatriate who ran in Dennery for the People's Progressive Party, PPP, on August 14, 1961. She ran against Mr. Morris Mason of the SLP and secured 39 votes, or 2.2% of the vote. Ladies, it was these 39 votes which began the race in earnest to the House of Parliament for women in St. Lucia. So I think we should acknowledge her. Thank you. Following this, in 1964, Mrs. Heraldine Rock became the first woman to defeat a male candidate in St. Lucia, yes, 64, in the Castries South constituency. She was on a UWP ticket in a 3-way race against the SLP incumbent, Chief Minister Honorable George F.L. Charles, and former SLBGA Director, Mr. Swithin Scouten, running as an independent. Mrs. Rock secured 41.9% of the vote and defeated the independent candidate who got 9.9%. She almost unseated the Chief Minister. 123 votes separated her from winning that seat against the Chief Minister. And if I may get off script, she did all of this in 7 weeks. Okay, that's a feat. 10 years later, on a date I will never forget, May 7th, 1974, the same Mrs. Rock would go on to make history when she defeated political opponent Mr. George Odlum by a narrow margin of 42 votes, and she altered irrevocably the political landscape of St. Lucia. I'll clap too. This victory ushered in the first ever woman in the lower house of Parliament in St. Lucia, and it had taken 23 years post-adult suffrage in 1951 for a woman to get elected. Let me give you some of the optics through statistics, because I'm a statistics buff. I don't know, many people statistics bore them. I get all excited once I see the stats moving. So here we go. St. Lucia has witnessed 27 women who have faced an electorate out of approximately 551 candidates who have entered into a national poll since adult suffrage. The female vote share is cumulatively about 60,000 in total, and that represents 8% of the total votes ever cast in St. Lucia. These 27 women have run primarily against male candidates until women first ran against each other. That started in which year? Can you guess? 2001. Since then, 11 women, or 40.7% of female candidates, have experienced running against another woman contender. And this happened, let me check your memory. I gave you the first one. This happened in 2001. When else did it happen? 2011. And then 2000. All right. You with me? Now, I'm happy to have Janine Compton and Dr. Rigobert here with us because Miku North has to be highlighted as the most female-friendly constituency in recent times, since it was the site for an exceptional race in 2001 when an unprecedented 3 women ran against each other, with 1 male candidate in the minority also contesting. Miku North was also the first rural constituency to produce a female parliamentarian in 2007. One interesting fact, or depending on how you look at it, a factoid, you know, only 8% of male contenders in St. Lucia have ever contested a general election against a woman. 8%. This amounts to 41 men in this special category. And afterwards in the book, you can see who they are. So by and large, women have gained their political experience from vying for electoral space primarily against male candidates. 62.9% of female candidacies have competed against male contenders. Do you know how many times women have run in St. Lucia? Let me tell you. Women candidates have run 41 times in St. Lucia. Guess how many times they won? And they have won 10 times. The UWP has run a total of, come on UWPs, how many times? 13 women on a slate, beginning in its founding stages in 1964. Let's see if the SLP can get it. The SLP ran its first woman candidate 15 years later in what year? 1979. And it has fielded 9 female candidacies. It must be noted that one female candidate has the distinction of having run in 2 major political parties, and she won, and we know who that is. Of these 27 women who have run, only 21.4%, I repeat, 21.4% have won their seats, which in this case equals 6 women in all. The UWP has won with a woman 3 times, while the SLP has won with a woman 4 times. No third party, no minority party with a female candidate has ever won an election in St. Lucia. The first splinter party candidate ran in 1982, and the first batch of minority candidates ran in the now defunct National Alliance for Unity, NAU, in 2001, with an unprecedented 3 female candidates on a national poll, including St. Lucia's first mother-daughter combo. And they would be Jacinta Annius-Lee and Esther Lee. Please give them a hand. The majority of minority female candidates from different parties, I talk about the National Democratic Movement, the Lucian People's Movement, Lucian Greens, they contested in 2011, and they've not had a repeat showing since then. There have been in St. Lucia 2 independent female candidates, both running, what's it with Miku? Both running in the 2 Miku constituencies, with the first of these women contesting a general election in 1997. The second has the distinction of having secured the highest ever to date vote share of any female independent, and that was in the 30 to 39% range, and it would be Janine Compton here with us. But in talking about that, we have to look at the rate of attrition. The rate of attrition for female politicians is alarmingly high. In fact, women's share of the lower house has never surpassed 16.7%. It's under 20%, 16.7%, compared with the Senate, which has appointed women to a height of 36.4% maximum representation. For female parliamentarians to date, 4 out of 7 have been one-term political wonder women, and this represents 57.1%. Moving along, we have what I have termed the fleeting female candidate syndrome. It's very evident in St. Lucia, where almost 60%, if you want me to be precise, it's 59.2%, almost 60% have only faced the poll for one general election. Compounding this, about a third of female candidates have disappeared altogether from the political scene post-elections. This has serious implications for not only attracting quality female candidates, but also retaining them within the I don't know where that word came from, within the political process for the medium and the long term. Let's talk about the women's electoral space as I begin to get down to the other part of my presentation. Women have lost in how many elections? Let's see if you can guess. 8 elections. And I'd like to recognize Honorable Leon Theodore John, Speaker of the House of Assembly. Not that you lost in an election at all, but I just noted. Oh, yes, you did. I forgot. Yes, you did. Well, you're one of these 8, okay? Women have lost in 8 electoral districts in St. Lucia, but they won once or multiply in 5 constituencies, mostly within the Castries Basin or the Northern Corridor. Therefore, women have successfully occupied and won about 30% of the electoral seats in St. Lucia from 1974 to 2016. The Castries Basin, with its 5 electoral districts, is the most popular area for women to run, and it has recorded the most comparative success for women candidates in St. Lucia. Now, this one is a pet peeve. Unbelievably, about a quarter of the electoral map in St. Lucia has never seen a female candidate. And this male political enclave, or this last bastion of male possession, stretches contiguously and primarily along the western corridor of St. Lucia. You could name them: Vieux-Fort South, La Brie, Choiseul, Soufrière. Girls, we gotta do something about that. We gotta do something about that. Thankfully, one woman back in 1979, rest her soul, 38 years ago, ran in ancillary canneries. You remember that, Miss Bourne? Teacher Bourne, you do remember that. Ancillary canneries for the SLP. And that is what broke the male political hegemony of the seemingly impenetrable West Coast. We gotta do something about that. We can't let that go, man. Moving along, looking at the electoral years after 1961, there was a triad of barren spots for female representation where no woman was on the ballot. And Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you definitely know about these times. Not 1969, but you were there in 87? You were there in 92? Were you there? Yes, you were there. However, after 1992, maybe because of your influence, there have been no less than 4 women on the slate unbrokenly until the present time. That deserves a round of applause. Now, within the lower chamber of the House, post-1997, thankfully, there was only one instance when there was not one female face present as members of Parliament. I didn't say cabinet, I said Parliament during the period. Of course, you can guess when that was. December 2006 until November 2007. You want to know about the bumper years. So what were the bumper years for female candidacies? They have been 2001, 2011, 2016. 2001 I consider the outlier year, where we made history in St. Lucia. We had a pioneering woman from the UWP, and she led a political party into a general elections. And simultaneously, I get excited about that. An unprecedented 9 women contested a general election, with her party fielding 4 of these women, Dr. Morella Joseph. And a minority party, the NAU, fielded 3 of these women. 2011 was also an exceptional year, where the highest number of women, how many? Come on, this we should know. 2011, how many women ran? 10. 10 of 52, a 52-member slate. And that represents 19.2% of female representation, female political capital in a general election, coming from major parties, minor parties, independent candidates. In fact, the entire spectrum for elective politics in St. Lucia happened for women in 2011. So, for those of you who contested then, bravo. In contrast, oh dear, and I hate to bring up this year because this is the year when the youngest ever senator in St. Lucia ran, Honorable Tessa Mangal. 2006 was the most dismal year for women vying for a seat in the politics of St. Lucia. Not one of the 4 female contenders managed to win a seat. So for the first time since 1997, the lower house was decidedly filled with testosterone. It was pungent in that house, man. It was pungent. Save for the historic appointment of St. Lucia's first ever female House Speaker. You gotta know who that is. Honorable Sarah Flood Bobran. Yes. But within the space of January 2006 to November 2007, you know what happened? Women power again. A female phenomenon occurred for women's leadership, and it included the bicameral chamber. This was the year of the awesome threesome. We had a woman Governor General, Dame Paulette Louise. Give it up for the Dame. We had a woman as House Speaker, Honorable Sarah Flood Bobran. And hello, she's not here with us today, but we had a woman as the President of the Senate, Dr. Rosemary Husbands Mathern. That was a year, man, 2007. And I'm sure you remember the calypso that was sang by, what's her name? Lady Spice, definitely. Okay, I'm wrapping down, but let me talk about women in cabinet before I go. And this is prior to my conclusion, so don't think I'm here for all day, okay? Guess how many women have been in cabinet? It was shocking to me. Man, only 12 women have sat in cabinet here. 12 women. In the 43 years that women have been appointed as ministers of government, beginning in 1974. 12 women. I mean, wow, that's like Jesus and his disciples, you know, just the 12, okay? Including 2 women of non-partisan backgrounds, respectively, the first female Minister of Education, name please? Margarita Alexander, very good. And the first female Attorney General and Minister for Legal Affairs? Definitely, Justice Lorraine Williams. And I excluded the brief stint of one woman in the interim government in 1982. Can you guess who she was? Senator Merle Comby. Very good. All right. You on top of it. Did you help me write this book as well? Man, you on top of your facts. After 1992, at the level of cabinet, there has been no gap in female representation, win or lose, sometimes utilizing the handy mechanism of the Senate to effect these necessary ministerial appointments. Currently, under this government, an unprecedented 4 women are serving in cabinet. Unprecedented. That is 25% of its composition at the decision-making and policy-shaping level. Let's acknowledge that again. 4 women are in cabinet. Yet, even with this national female victory, St. Lucia falls short of the international benchmark of 30%. That's the critical mass. So kindly work on that a bit, yes? Of women, you need 30% at least at the decision-making level. But we have kiboshed that. We're taking it further. We want 40. We want 30 again. 30 is yesterday's news. We want 40. As I wrap up, within the wider Caribbean recently, in terms of political developments, more women have been populating the political news. For instance, and I'm sure you heard this, within the last 3 months, 3 countries come to mind. Antigua and Barbuda. The wife of Prime Minister Honorable Gaston Brown, Mrs. Marie Bird Brown, has declared her interest in replacing her uncle, national hero, former Prime Minister Sylvester Bird, the incumbent, in the St. John's Rural East constituency for the Antigua Labour Party. If she gets the nod, she will contest the seat against 2 other female candidates, including the female Senate President, Miss Alincia Grant. Grenada. Mrs. Kendra Maturin Stewart has expressed an interest in taking over the seat from the outgoing Member of Parliament, Honorable Elvin Nimrod, for the constituency of Carriacou and Petite Martinique on behalf of the ruling New National Party. She will contest against 2 other males in the runoffs. This one you'll like, Barbados. Our very own St. Lucian-born Mrs. Mara Thompson, née Giraudy, widow of former Prime Minister of Barbados, Honorable David Thompson, who replaced her deceased husband in the St. John's seat in 2011 for the Democratic Labour Party, and she won it for the Democratic Labour Party. She has decided, I'm not seeking re-election in this coming term. So, you know, I have done the Caribbean. What tidbit can I give you from St. Lucia? Let's see. And in St. Lucia, Miss Emma Hippolyte of the St. Lucia Labour Party, the first woman to ever act as Prime Minister of St. Lucia. She also becomes the first woman to have taken a stab at vying for the chair's position in her party, one of the most influential gatekeeper roles in any political party. While Miss Hippolyte lost to a male contender, Honorable Moses Moussa Jean-Baptiste, ladies, she has paved the way for other women to go for the big stakes within their respective party's executive body. Kindly give her a round of applause. I salute you, sister. In closing, on the threshold of the 90th anniversary of the SIM, it is evident in St. Lucia that about 5% is not decent enough representation for women in St. Lucia after 56 years of the female political hustle. 5%. 5% is like being in the basement when the minimum floor for representation at every election should be at least 30%. And in St. Lucia's case, we have not even begun to bench press on the benchmark, having just under 20% of women candidates running in any election as our high water mark. It is true that this country can currently boast of having 25% female representation in cabinet, and that's a commendable calibration, but it falls short of the quantum leap to real progress, to create real change. I repeat, it falls short of the quantum leap to real progress, to create real change. Let me also acknowledge the presence of Your Excellency, Guy Mayers, High Commissioner of St. Lucia to the United Kingdom, thank you for being here. We met on the beach this morning. He was taking his jog, and I was taking in some sand. Okay. On behalf of the SIM, I wish to strongly encourage St. Lucia to become the first in the Americas from the Caribbean to adopt legislation aimed at 60-40 parity. Minister, that's your task. Not 70-30, not 60-40. We want, no, not 80-20, sorry. So not 70-30, not 80-20, but 60-40 all the way and across the board. Can you say that with me? 60-40, all the way and across the board. 60-40. That should become the country's new acceptable bottom line. 60-40 throughout public life. 60-40. St. Lucia has the opportunity to correct the lapses and infelicities in its female representation and to be at the vanguard of Caribbean countries in advancing women's political rights. Let the launch of Running in Heels on this day, Tuesday, November 28th, 2017, be the starting point in the race for parity, 60-40, for women in politics in this country. I thank you.
I am really, really thrilled that we're seeing this happening today. My job is just to give you a little background, and the concept of the project was actually born out of the need, first of all, to recognize the remarkable contributions of St. Lucian women at all levels of the democratic political process, from grassroots party foot soldiers to elected or appointed members of the country's legislature. While we continue to celebrate one of our first female politicians, parliamentarians, and government minister, the late Mrs. Heraldine Rock, and the several other women who have bravely followed in her footsteps, we are mindful that women are still grossly underrepresented in elective politics at the highest levels of political leadership, even though they outnumber their male counterparts at all other levels in the political parties. We can no longer remain silent or continue to work quietly in the background as social and economic issues such as crime, violence, unemployment, underemployment, etc., continue to negatively impact our lives and our future. Women's voices must be heard at the level where it matters most, where we can articulate and make decisions on these and other such issues if we wish to have any semblance of sustainable human development in our country, the region, and the world. Promoting the empowerment of women through political participation is key to achieving a more equitable distribution of power and resources in any society. Despite the advances made by women in the political arena in recent times, and we had the history, and you'll read a little more about it in the book, we all know the challenges they face as they continue to remain grossly underrepresented, with only 16% of elected members of parliaments around the world as women. We are all aware of the institutional barriers, discriminatory attitudes, religious, social norms, the disproportionate responsibilities for child and family care that make it extremely difficult for women to have greater parity in political representation and leadership roles. And so the purpose of the project was to document the contributions of these notable St. Lucian women, but most importantly, it is intended to encourage more women, in particular young women, to get involved at the highest level of political decision-making in St. Lucia. The project included research for the material, And that builds, somewhat on some information that was already available at the Division of Gender Relations, the documentation of the information, and the printing of the publication. After careful consideration, a selection committee unanimously agreed on the firm of right-angle imaging, Barbara Jacob Small, to undertake the project. Barbara later teamed up with Ms. Yasmin Odlam, a phenomenal duo, to create this exceptional publication which we are launching today. The project would not have been possible without the financial and technical support of the National Commission for UNESCO. I wish to acknowledge Ms. Marcia Simthorian Laura, Ms. Caroline O'Geese, Mrs. Yolanda Mitchell Burton, and their office team, who also provided oversight for the accuracy of the information and the timely completion of the project, which all of us who have been involved in the process have agreed that the outcome has far, far exceeded our expectations. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank most profoundly all the women who themselves provided the information, as well as those who made information available, and anyone else who contributed in any other way to the successful completion of this project. Those of you here, some of you here will be presented with copies of the book today. The book is available for sale. And it's not only available it'll also be available online. So you have access to the book. The proceeds of the book will go towards the support of the women, towards the Women's Support Center. That's our only shelter for women who are victims of domestic violence in St. Lucia. So we will have a vote of thanks later, but let me just thank everyone who made today possible. And we really look forward to your support. This is Christmas time, so that's a good gift to give. So let us see the sales coming on. I thank you all.
It's extremely gratifying to be entrusted with an important work and to find that even the universe agrees that you're the right team for it. From the get-go, I felt that the story on women in elective politics could never be complete being restricted to the bid for the ballot, because I've always known that women are the cornerstone of partisan politics and electioneering. Yasmin tends to be my wordsmith and my pocket poet, and it's typical for me to pick her brain when I want a novel twist on words and something with imagery. The truth is that when I called on her for a name, I had no idea that she was sitting on a treasure trove of statistics and dates and stories, and was also equipped with both the local and the global context to give the work some weight from both a sort of historical perspective and from an academic standpoint.
In 2015, I had begun to collect information on women in politics in the Caribbean as part of my job as the Caribbean Specialist for Gender at the Inter-American Commission of Women of the Organization of American States. I was doing this with a view to designing a project along those lines, since this was a new portfolio on which I was embarking, Women in Politics. I started with St. Lucia because it was the island with which I was the most familiar, and with the electoral statistics more easily available and accessible to me, St. Lucia seemed a very logical choice. When I collected the statistics and made some analysis of them preliminarily, I then approached Ms. Shams Gaspar, Director of the Department of Gender Relations, to approach her minister, where we would both do some sort of presentation on women and politics for International Women's Day 2016. I had also approached the minister in this regard prior, and both were very interested. However, at the time, it was not feasible for this to have been brought to pass, so that idea was temporarily shelved and another program took its place for International Women's Day. In December 2016, I'm still working on women in politics in the Caribbean, and I'm looking at other territories when I received a call from Barbara Jacobs Small in St. Lucia asking me for assistance on a new project with which she was working. She started, "Yes, I still remember her husky voiced appeal coming through with urgency. I need a title for a book on women and politics. By yesterday. Any suggestions?" Typical Babs, she just gets right to the point with an immediacy that is compelling. At the time, I was deeply mired in domestic chores, so I told B to give me a night to think about it. And as soon as I got off the phone with Barbara, after she had explained what the project was about, I felt that unmistakable moment of destiny vibrating through my being. It was just a palpable energy, and I knew, the moment had come. A moment of coincidence, of synchronicity that I had to sort of capitalize on in this moment. And in that moment, the title came. The title that came to me was Running Uphill in Heels. Well, I shared it with Barbara, and she loved the title, with a slight adjustment, of course. Delete uphill. The synchronicity was too powerful for me. So I told Barbara that I had been doing research on this topic for the last 2 or so years, and I would love to assist with the project, of course with clearance from the Inter-American Commission of Women and the Department of Gender Relations.
So here we are, delivering the definitive story of the female dimension of our political journey from 1961 to today.
And thus began this incredible journey of collaboration between SIM, which is the Commission's acronym in Spanish, the Department of Gender Relations, and UNESCO. With all approvals in place, I began to write feverishly from January 3rd, 2017 to March 31st, 2017 for hours and hours a day, even on weekends, while Barbara in St. Lucia was busy collating and scribing research on the women's biographies and also sourcing archival material that she could pass on to me that I could use in the writing of the book.
In the process of doing research, my sense of how unsung women and their perspective of this journey would be proven, as I spoke with so many different ladies over the phone, face-to-face, on hour-long WhatsApp conversations, some at first light, some at high noon, and some late at night, and a good few via email interview if there is such a thing.
Most communities on the island.
We had many exchanges by telephone, many exchanges of drafts, many exchanges of points of view, many disagreements, and many agreements. It was just an electric process, a very magnetic moment as we tried very much to meet our deadline of March 1st. Clearly, we did not meet our deadline. But by March 31st, everything was ready in some form to be sent on to graphics.
Some decades later are still ambivalent on documenting the facts as they unfolded for the historical account, or because they struggle with what may be prudent to divulge. Do they let bygones be bygones, or do they err on the side of caution? Especially for those who still have to navigate party affiliations and loyalties today. But in reading between the lines of their caution, I realize how little power is really in the hands of women in politics, even today. Some women are particularly memorable for the obvious passion and commitment they still have for what was as much their life's work as the profession that actually paid their bills. Indeed, some women like Mrs. Gertrude George, who never run a seat, but who was part of the marrow of the backbone of old UWP, who could recount perhaps forgotten aspects of the party's history, the players, the tensions, the anecdotes. This book could never really be complete without the perspective of the lens of her memory and the memory of other women like her. People like, Shirley Lewis, and who we don't really treat with in the book, but there are so many other women. Finally, I got a renewed sense of the value of documentation and the significance of our historical archives. So shout out to St. Lucia National Archives Authority and Mrs. Margot Thomas and her team. Because more often than not, as I combed through old records and newspapers, I made discoveries that either gave powerful witness to the narrative that was unfolding as Yasmin wove those stories together. And then there were those which begged a rewrite of a chapter because they gave a new perspective that we perhaps did not have or we had overlooked. Coming to mind is an open letter to Laurie Voss written to the editor at the time, for example. I love the newspaper caption, "The Defiant Ones." That one stands out for me. "The Defiant Ones" was a newspaper caption that accompanied a photo of Mrs. Sarah Flood Bobra, Mrs. Petra Jeffrey Nelson, and Ms. Tessa Mangal. And being a nonconformist myself, that one gave me some moments of mirth.
For me, this was a call to duty that I could not shirk. And I saw the project in grand terms. In fact, I saw the project in such a way that it incurred a champagne cost on a very Moby budget, as Barbara always reminded me. However, somehow we both had the faith that this would work, that this needed to be done, and it needed to be done properly, and it needed to be done in the most magnificent way possible. And here we are today. Barbara and I have created a piece of history in documenting the lives of the women who have been part of the political landscape of St. Lucia. And not only have we done so to the best of our ability, but each and every woman, or for those who have passed on, each and every family member, has been so cooperative in bringing this project together that we knew that it was nothing short of an act of faith, something divinely ordained, and a moment that was ready to be born.
So it has indeed been as much an honor for me as it has been an education.
To all the girls, this is in celebration. This is praise. This is in defense of every woman. This is you thinking, and this is me talking. This is us supporting a woman generation. This is a woman thing. This is a girl thing. This for the mothers, and this is for the grandmothers. This is for everyone who dares to be a woman. Well, to tell you the truth, being a woman just ain't easy. To reach a man, you have to put words in another man's mouth to speak to the man you're trying to reach. Because sometimes he don't listen to anybody else but the brothers. And all that stupidness about women balancing home and work and everything in between is out of balance because it don't have no equilibrium. Because you always leaning to one side of life while your mind tugging you to go in a direction that no woman has gone before. And on top of all of that, on top of knowing your place and submitting to your man, and bumping your head against the ceiling they say is glass, only because they ain't feel the hard bump you get when you knock your own head and get to find out it's not glass, but a new millennium material that made of iron but look like glass. On top of all of that, woman giving you more trouble because you is a woman. You don't know what I mean? Maybe you don't realize two mother crab can't occupy the same universe is why your colleagues at work don't really talk to you. But that's funny. And that don't make much sense because the women just like you talking to every other mother crab in the same small universal space. So you're thinking it have to be something that you do. Why they don't like you. And women, yes, women just like you, will want to cut you down just because you, like them, trying to define yourself. And they want to tell you how to dress and why you don't look good today. And they think highly of themselves, I tell you. To think that their laughter and opinions on your style and your hair and your shoes mean a thing. As if in the little universe you're trying to set up for yourself, they mean more than they're supposed to. So this is for all the girls who dare to be different, who step out in bright yellow like a blazing sun when all the world is in corporate blue. This is for all the girls who don't care about the status quo and fling another dimension in the face of what it means to be a woman. This is for all the women who they say have too much style. The stockinged women, and the made-up women, and the women with the accents and long nails who make all the other plain Janes feel like less than $1, even though they themselves don't even have a cent. And this is for all the girls who make the world stand at attention with the swing of the hips and the appeal of the glance. This is for those women who make other girls hold on tightly to their men, not because they want them or even try to get them, but because they shine too brightly not to be noticed by every single one of them. But this is for all the girls who are loyal to the sisters, who won't betray them with their men or diss them without reason. This is for all the girls who see men as colleagues, not just lovers, and who run shoulder to shoulder with the eagles and the tigers. But being a woman is a strange, strange thing. All that power, and yet no real authority, because it have no unity in the camp. And the only time you have real sisters is when you have a tragedy for all the world to see. They come like ants on a sugar hill to take a tasty morsel of the story to satisfy their hope that you ain't as good as people say you are. But the moment you back up again, the moment you begin to blaze, they walk out, avert their eyes when they see you come in, cross the road instead of saying good morning, because they're comparing themselves to you, and you coming out on top, and they can't handle that. What is wrong with woman? And they hoping and they praying something will happen to make you lose your mind. And they hoping and they praying your man will leave you, and your business will bust, and you will be embarrassed. But they don't know in the long journey of your life, them things done happen already is why and how is by the grace of God you surviving today. They don't know if they can walk in your size 10 wide width shoes, but they're jealous for them all the same. So this is for all the girls who make things happen, who aren't afraid to fall for the rush of the comeback. This is for all the girls who know the pain of a vision, the grind of the challenge, and the price of the fight. This is for all the girls who'd rather read than do dishes, who'd rather write and create than skin chicken and fry fishes. This is for the girls who run hot and sweaty with ideas, and whose hair won't stay in place while they chase their dreams. This is for the girls who share themselves with the world, every part of themselves except their very soul. This is for the girls who redefine womanhood into something vast and encompassing all shades of their personhood. But to be a woman, you have to make a choice in your head first, and then get your heart and your body to follow. It's what you want to go make you decide how you go move. Is what you want the ring and the husband, the family, your degrees, your career, an international affair? Is either you make a choice to partner with a man or to run your whole show yourself and don't leave no place for this compromised stupidness. Where it fall, it fall. When he come, he come. If he come, and you don't care. If you want it all, you have to learn to play the game and toe the line. You have to choose which battles to fight and learn when to just sit tight. So it's either you're going to be a man's woman or a woman unto yourself. And when you make that choice, you have to stick with it and leave every other option for another life where it would have no God and no family and no society to remind you. So this is for all the girls who straddle pretty skirts and loose pants, sexy heels and ballet flats, flowing tresses and quick one-plats, chic acrylics and laptop digits. This is for the girls who struggle with their choice, who want their husband in their bed and their degree above their head. This is for the girls who appreciate their men, who make them feel loved and wanted, though they're strong and independent. This is for the other kind of girls who go it alone, who chart their own costs and buy their own home. This is for the girls whose minds can't be tamed by any man or woman who question every norm and break every tradition. This is for the girls.
I'd like to call on Ms. Charms Gasper back to the stage, please, former Director of Gender Relations, to make our first 3 presentations. And our first presentation is to none other than Her Excellency, Dame Calliope Paulette Louise, Governor General of St. Lucia. Herself, of course, an icon in education, governance, and culture. Our second presentation to Honorable Dr. Gail T.C. Rigobert, Minister of Education, Innovation, Gender Relations, Sustainable Development, and Minister for UNESCO Affairs. Get well soon, Madam Minister. Ms. Marcia Symphorian, Secretary General, National Commission for UNESCO, represented today by Caroline Auguste, Officer in Charge of the National Commission. Thank you very much, Ms. Gasper. Thank you very much. And I would now, one more? We do have one more. Certainly to Honorable Philip J. Pear, Leader of the Opposition. My apologies, Mr. Pear. Thank you.
At this time, we will present copies of the publication to the featured women. And as Yasmin indicated earlier on, there's so many notable mentions. They stand out. They're really important for the history. And so I'd like to call on Her Excellency to assist us in handing out these copies as we also acknowledge some significant contributions. Special mention of political pioneers. Do we have any representative of Honorable Mary Grace Auguste in the House? No, I suspect not. But she is the first woman to be nominated to the Legislative Chamber as an unofficial member in 1952, first female director of the Coconut Growers Association, Sugar Manufacturers Association, the Copper Manufacturing Limited, and the Agricultural Credit Fund. She was the first president of the St. Lucia Women's Association, and in that time, that was a very significant accomplishment. We also recognize Mrs. Geraldine Rock. I don't think we have any relatives here this morning. I beg your pardon? She declines. But I think Yasmin gave you her stats. First woman to hold a position in a political party, elected as vice president chair of the UWP in 1964. First woman to win a seat in a general elections and become a member of parliament as the Minister for Housing, Community Development, Local Government and Social Affairs in 1974. She was the first woman to be invited to serve in the Cabinet of Ministers also in 1974. And we have Mrs. Frances Michel. Is her son here, Benoit? Do we have a representative of Mrs. Frances Michel? I see he didn't make it. First female trade union leader and then elected president of the Farmers and Farm Workers Union in 1976. Only female politician to run in 2 distinct constituencies and for 2 different political parties, 1979 and 1982. First female politician to be a socialist and to march in protest against the policies of the government of the day in relation to agricultural workers' rights. First woman to be a founding member of a political party in 1982, first woman treasurer and secretary general of a political party in 1982, and first female general consul of St. Lucia stationed in Havana, Cuba, 2000. And now we hand out certificates of achievement prepared, by SIM on behalf of the Division of Gender Relations to be handed out to Mrs. Daphne Murray, oldest living female politician at 88, first female treasurer 1982, and assistant secretary of the SLP 1980. I think Her Excellency would like to be gracious and go to her. Yes, give Her Excellency a hand. Yes. Let's stand and recognize our oldest living female politician. Yes. Daphne Murray. Mrs. Sarah Flood Bobra, Honorable Sarah Flood Bobra, first ever politician to unseat a sitting prime minister in 1997, first female to win a seat for two rival political parties, only female politician to win in 3 general elections, most successful female politician in electoral wins, first female Speaker of the House of Representatives, 2007, first woman to enter a challenge for the political leadership of a party, 2015, first female to have responsibility for the Ministry of External Affairs, 2016, Honorable Sarah Flood Bobra. Just like to notify all the recipients of certificates. We do have envelopes for you. I didn't want to roll them up with ribbon. That just makes you forget them in a drawer. Ambassador Minister Rambali, youngest ever politician in the English-speaking Commonwealth, elected at age 21, 1997. Youngest politician in contemporary Caribbean politics to hold full ministerial office in the Ministry of Tourism and Civil Aviation in 2000. First female ambassador of St. Lucia to the United Nations in 2012. First female politician to have attained almost 70% of the vote in her constituency in 1997. First woman to have achieved an unbroken 9 years in government with 6 in cabinet as a minister in between 1997 and 2006. Mrs. Lilia Harksing, first female independent candidate in 1997 and first female to run in a minority party, NAU, in 2000. Only female to have run in 4 consecutive general elections between 1997 and 2011, and has been affiliated with 3 political parties, UWP, NAU, and SLP. Oldest female candidate to have ever contested in a national poll in 2000. The youthful Miss Lilia Harksing. Youthful in physique and in attitude and in mentality, a wonderful woman. Dr. Morella Joseph is not with us this morning. She called in her apologies. She developed a back problem just this morning. But she was really looking forward to being here, and she kept checking on us during the progress of the publication. First woman to lead a political party, UWP, in St. Lucia, and also to lead a party into a general election in 2000. First female deputy political leader of a political party, UWP, in 1999. Introduced the inaugural highest number of women candidates ever to contest a general election, 4 in 2011. First female co-chair of the Experimental National Alliance of Opposition Political Parties and deputy political leader of the National Alliance, October 2001. Let me now call Ms. Alvina Reynolds. First woman to win a seat in her own right after replacing a male incumbent in 2011. Had the narrowest political victory for a female candidate when she won by 2 votes in 2011. And the minister, I believe, under which this movement towards getting this project off the ground really begun in earnest. Ms. Emma Hippolyte. Ms. Emma Hippolyte has polled the highest number of votes for a female candidate, 5,242 polled in 2011. First woman to act as Prime Minister of St. Lucia in 2015. First woman to lead the government audit department in the Commonwealth of Nations, and who was a legend in that regard. Mrs. Janine Compton-Antoine, first woman politician to have won a seat in a rural constituency, 2007. First woman to have taken over the seat of her father and also to win in a by-election, making her the first woman to enter parliament as a result of a by-election in 2007. The highest polling female independent candidate, 1,293 votes, lost by 340 votes in 2011. First female commissioner to chair the International Whaling Commission, IWC, on behalf of St. Lucia in 2012. Afterwards, she was elected to chair the IWC Sub-Whaling Committee, only candidate to have drawn up a pre-election contract with constituents to empower them to remove her for non-performance in 2016. Honorable Dr. Gail Rigobert, first female politician to begin her political life as an opposition member of parliament in 2011. First woman politician to be elected as deputy political leader of a party, UWP, and then to win twice, 2013 and 2015, among her male contenders. First female to be appointed as the leader of the parliamentary opposition in 2014. Special category non-political honorees: Justice Lorraine Williams, first female Attorney General and Minister for Legal Affairs in 1992, as the first female minister with responsibility for women's affairs, passed through a suite of important legislation in civil matters to protect women and their families from domestic violence and for maintenance of their children. Domestic Violence Act of 1994 and Attachment of Earnings Act 1994, and established the Family Court in St. Lucia in 1995. First OECS national to be elected as president of the Inter-American Commission of Women in 1996. First female OECS High Commissioner to Canada, 2006. She's represented by her father, Mr. Nathalbert Husbands. Noteworthy female landmarks in the political life of St. Lucia: Mrs. Felicia Brown, first female deputy chair of a minority party, 2010, but she's not here with us. She's in Barbados. I believe she also just had a baby. Mrs. Melanie Freites, first female to run solely on an environmental platform in 2011. I believe Melanie is here this morning. Our next notable mention is not with us this morning. Ms. Mary Francis, first female secretary of a political party in 1992, first St. Lucian female registrar of the High Court, 1983 to 1989. Ms. Charlotte Tessa Mangal, youngest female senator in St. Lucia at 22 in 1997, first woman to be appointed as a senator in two rival parties, SLP 1997, UWP 2006, first female to be appointed as the Minister for Commerce, Industry and Consumer Affairs, 2009. Ms. Sibel Snack is not with us this morning. She's represented by her sister, first female politician to successfully seek redress through the court system on a party matter in 2006. Very important for the history. Dr. Rosemary Husbands Mathre, represented by her father, Mr. Nathalbert Husbands, this morning. She's out of state. First woman to hold the top leadership positions in the bicameral chambers of Parliament, elected as first female president of the Senate in 2007, and then was elected Speaker of the House of Representatives in 2008. She's represented by her daughter. Mrs. Petra Jeffrey Nelson, founding member and executive member of a feminist NGO, Raise Your Voice St. Lucia, which champions the revolutionary policy changes necessary to achieve gender parity in St. Lucia. Senator Fortuna Belrose, first female youth and sports officer within the Ministry of Community Development, Social Affairs, Youth and Sports in 1981 to 1987, and subsequently extensive years working with youth and sports at the public service level, and president of the St. Lucia Olympic Committee. First female president of the St. Lucia Olympic Committee. Senator Mary Isaac, first female price control and supply officer in St. Lucia, who then presided over the move from price control and supply to consumer affairs. First female president of the St. Lucia Civil Service Association, which is the largest public sector trade union in St. Lucia, 2009 to 2014. they got it. Miss Margarita Alexander is not with us this morning. Is anybody representing her? No. First female leader of government business in the Senate, 1982 to 1985. Dr. Charmaine Gardner, first woman as Deputy President of the Senate to deputize for the President of the Senate, 1987, 1992, and 1992 to 1997, and longest serving woman senator, 10 years from 1987. Dame Lawrence Laurent, first female parliamentary commissioner ombudsman in the English-speaking Caribbean, 1996. Yes, let us stand, let us honor her with our regards this morning, highest regards. Two dames. Okay. And Honorable Leon Theodore John, first woman politician to have presided over both chambers of the bicameral parliament, 2010 and 2016, and current Speaker of the House of Assembly. And we want to call the other featured ladies, Mrs. Mary Skelly, is a representative for Miss Mary Polius here. We did receive her apologies. Dr. Alison Gajada. When she walked in, I asked if she got the memo for the color scheme. Mrs. Gail Philip Jawair. Is there a representative for the late Lady Marilyn Flosack? Not today. Miss Austin, yes, we do? Okay. From the chambers of Flosack and Fleming. Miss Austina Fanas. Jacinta Anius Lee, not here. Do we have a representative for Miss Monica Casely? Yes, we do. Miss Nigel Tusa, representative. Mrs. Nancy Charles, no representative. Mrs. Agatha Japanel. Alicia Paul is not here. Marisa Thomas is not here. Yeah. Mrs. Gertrude George. And I almost feel I should ask everyone to stand and recognize Mrs. Gertrude George, who's here, who stands, I believe, representing, as the Honorable Minister described them, as some of the barefoot women and some of those who lead people, lead candidates into elections, down the campaign trail, praying for them, bearing them up, keeping the fort. The women who are still at work even after the candidates have gone home from the campaigning. They're still at the office burning the lights. The women who leave their own light bills unpaid at home to pay the light bill at the constituency office. So when we stand to recognize her, we stand and we acknowledge all these women. Thank you. Miss Andrea Bourne, some of the ladies behind the scenes, giving yeoman service to political parties for decades and decades and decades. And we really could not have recognized everyone. Anybody else? I didn't call. I really hope I didn't leave anybody else out. Huh? Cindy Maida Gold. Yeah. And I think our final person is Mrs. Cindy Maida Gold, who's not here. She's passed on and she's not represented here. So, I beg your pardon? Okay. Oh, yes, all right. We'll ask Mr. Buffalo Odlum to accept on behalf of Cindy Maida Gold. Women behind the scenes. And I think that's it. Thank you very much for your service, Your Excellency. Thank you so very much. I hand you back to the Master of Ceremonies.
We have some further complimentary copies to be presented, and I ask Honorable Gail Rigobert to please assist with these presentations. Ms. Margot Thomas, Director of the St. Lucia National Archives. An invaluable resource, I'm sure it has been in the compilation of this text. So a round of applause for the archives and certainly for Ms. Thomas. Dr. Veronica Simon, head of the Open Campus of the University of the West Indies. She's not present today, but she'll certainly be getting her copy. Ms. Della Ashby, President of the St. Lucia Labour Party Women's Arm. Ms. Diane Felicien, President of the United Workers' Party Women's Arm. Not present today, unfortunately. Thank you very much, Dr. Rigobert. Yes. And as we prepare to bring our proceedings this morning to a close, I would actually ask as well that all of the ladies who were recipients this morning stay behind just a moment so that we can get a group photo, which I'm sure will be in and of itself an historical iconic moment.